Hello and welcome to That's English. I'm Vanessa and this is Robert. Welcome, Robert.
Hello, Vanessa. Thank you. And hello to you. We're looking forward to working with you all on That's English.
Yes, we are. Well, how are you, Robert?
Fine, thanks. Have you had a good holiday?
Yes, it was wonderful. I've been to Spain. I spoke Spanish all the time.
Great! I've been to France.
Really? That's nice.
Yes, I'm trying to learn French. It's very difficult.
I know. And how about you? How's your English? Have you spoken any English recently?
En este programa y en el siguiente hablaremos de las características necesarias para aprender bien una lengua extranjera.
Now, we're going to meet Jean and Walter Reynolds from England. Jean is trying to learn Spanish.
And it's not easy for her. As you watch the play, think about this question. What problems do Jean and Walter have with Spanish? ¿Qué problemas tienen Walter y Jean para aprender español?
Vivo en Inglaterra, en una casa con jardín, en el campo a 50 kilómetros de Londres. I'm Jean. I work at the Northern Bank. I want to be a manager, but I can only speak English. It's important for my work to speak 2 languages. So, I'm learning Spanish. Excuse me.
That's Jean. She's on lesson 11. Buen viaje. I'm Walter. I'm married to Jean. Do you remember the Alcazar in Seville? All those small streets with the beautiful white houses and patios?
Walter,
What?
could you be quiet, please? I'm trying to study.
I'm sorry. Jean and I went to Spain when we got married. We had a good time, but Jean couldn't speak much Spanish.
Walter, I can't concentrate. I'm trying to learn the grammar. Yo quiero, tú quieres, nosotros queremos.
Grammar! You don't need grammar. You need to use the language every day with Spanish people. You should find someone who can speak Spanish and practice with them.
Of course you need grammar, Walter. But you need other things as well. You have to learn the rules of pronunciation, and you have to listen. And yes, you have to speak the language whenever you can, and you need quiet so that you can study.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Could you stop singing, please? Could I finish this lesson, please?
Okay. Hermoso, española, hermoso. Spanish is a beautiful language. Beautiful. I can speak a little Spanish. Jean tries very hard. She wants to be a manager at the bank. She studies her Spanish books every day. She listens to the cassette again and again. She tries hard with the pronunciation.
Muy bien, gracias. Para mí, por favor.
Some people are good at languages, and some people are not good at languages.
Walter, why don't you learn Spanish?
Me?
Yes, you.
No.
Why don't you want to learn?
I can speak Spanish.
Really? Say something.
Buenas tardes, señorita.
Yes. Can you say anything else? Walter, I know what we ought to do. We can learn Spanish together. It'll be fun. We can learn the vocabulary and the grammar together. We can practice every evening. We can go to classes together.
You can't learn good Spanish in England. It's impossible.
Of course you can. You can learn any language anywhere if you want to.
You can't learn Spanish out of a book.
Why not?
Babies don't learn to speak English from a book. How do babies learn to speak? They listen to the words and they watch what people do and how they do it. They watch the different expressions and gestures. No. The way to learn Spanish is to talk to Spanish people. Or to other people who are learning Spanish.
Yes. Yes, you're right. I ought to talk to Oscar.
Oscar? Why?
Because Oscar can speak Spanish.
Well, as you can see, Spanish is not easy for Jean and Walter.
No, you can understand what they are saying in Spanish, but you can hear that they aren't Spanish. Have a look again at what Walter said.
Bueno, antes de nada, quiero aclarar que si vemos a Walter peleándose con el español, no es para reírnos de él. Lo hacemos para que te formes una idea de las diferencias y semejanzas entre las dos lenguas. La forma en que un inglés dice algo en español te muestra cómo deberías decirlo tú en inglés. Veremos cómo Walter tiene algunos problemas con la pronunciación. Por ejemplo, algunas veces pronuncia mal la S. Walter dijo hermoso con el sonido de una Z inglesa en vez de hermoso, que es como se diría correctamente en español.
Hermoso, española, hermoso.
¿Y qué pasa entonces con el inglés? En el idioma inglés, la letra S se pronuncia a veces como si fuera una Z y otras como una S.
Vanessa, what do you think is important when you're learning a foreign language?
Well, I agree with Walter. Do you remember what he said?
No. The way to learn Spanish is to talk to Spanish people.
You need to use the language every day with Spanish people. And of course, there are other important things too. When I learnt Spanish, I found that you have to do lots of different things to learn a language. There's grammar, of course, gramática, but that's only a small part of it.
Yes, you also have to learn the vocabulary, el vocabulario.
You have to learn the rules of pronunciation, las reglas de pronunciación.
I find pronunciation so difficult. What do you think is the most difficult word to pronounce in Spanish, Vanessa?
I think it's sugerencias. It took me a long time to learn how to say that.
Rejoneador was the most difficult word for me. But I listened, and I practiced, and I practiced, and I practiced.
Yes, you have to practice, practicar. Y otra cosa que he descubierto es que puedes aprender de tus errores si piensas en ellos. Es importante darse cuenta de que todos cometemos errores cuando aprendemos una lengua extranjera. Es una parte esencial del proceso de aprendizaje. Pero nunca dejes de seguir aprendiendo inglés por eso.
Por supuesto, hay muchas cosas más que tienes que hacer cuando aprendes una lengua. En la próxima escena, Jean y Walter hablan con su amigo, Oscar, sobre estas técnicas. Escucha y observa con atención. ¿Qué hizo Oscar para aprender español?
It's no good. I can't remember the Spanish words.
¿Dónde? Please use the dictionary. It's very simple. If you don't know a word or really can't remember it, just look it up in the dictionary.
Oh, Oscar, I'm just not very good at languages. I make mistakes. I forget the rules. People don't understand what I say.
Jean, everyone can learn a language. Keep working. It takes time. And everyone makes mistakes. How are you going to learn if you don't make mistakes? Just keep speaking and thinking about what you are saying all the time.
You speak very good Spanish, Oscar.
Thank you. But it wasn't easy for me. I went to classes for 2 years. Sometimes I thought it was impossible for me to speak the language, but I needed to speak Spanish. So I practiced every day, and I always read Spanish books and newspapers. You should do that too. And when I didn't understand what people said, I said, "Could you say that again, please?"
Well, okay, I was wrong. After 9 months' hard work, Jean passed her Spanish exam. And she's got a new job at the bank. She's now manager of the Bureau de Change. I think I ought to learn another language. It can't be too difficult, can it?
Before we finish, I'd like you to think about how you give advice.
Listen carefully. ¿Cuáles son las dos expresiones inglesas que se utilizan para dar consejos?
You should find someone who can speak Spanish and practice with them. I think I ought to learn another language.
Creo que debería aprender otra lengua extranjera. I think I ought to learn another language. Should y ought to significan lo mismo. Debería.
Now you practice with ought to. Give advice to someone who's learning a language, like this.
You should learn the grammar. You should learn the grammar.
You ought to learn the grammar. You ought to learn the grammar.
You should learn the rules of pronunciation. You should learn the rules of pronunciation.
You ought to learn the rules of pronunciation. You ought to learn the rules of pronunciation.
You should practice. You should practice.
You ought to practice. You ought to practice.
Very important. But that's all we have time for.
We think you should join us for our next programme.
Yes, I think you ought to. Meanwhile, think about the way you learn English. Are you a good language learner? There's more about all of this in your course book. You should take a look at it. Bye for now.
Goodbye. See you soon.